Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jace with the Forestry Project. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how we are starting to restore this grassland ecosystem behind or beside the pond. So first off, we want to get a natural area that we can enjoy. So get some natural grasses to grow back in, remove some of the invasives. We also want to get somewhere that we can start having frequent fire, and that's how we're going to keep those grasses in there. And then we want to start removing a lot of the man-made structures. So if you look behind me, there's a shooting house shed thing back there. We're going to be working on getting it torn down, hauled off, and then starting to work around the pond, getting some trees planted, getting the bald cypress for the privacy, and then starting to think about what we want to do to get these grasses back. So with that, guys, let's get into it. Let's get this shed torn down and start getting this area back.
You're kidding.
Not exactly what I'd planned on it doing.
No, let's
What used to be back there where the bricks are was the shooting house. Now we've got it all loaded onto the trailer, ready to go to the landfill. The first thing is your actual ratchet strap, and it just goes like this, and that's how you tighten it down. Now go ahead and get your cable or your strap over what you're going to be tying down, and when you're setting up your ratchet straps, I always like to make sure all of the ratchets are on the driver's side of the trailer so that I can just get out and easily clip them in. So one of the easiest ways I've found out is close it completely, and when you feed this through, instead of having to weave it back and forth, it already comes out the top, and you just go back over it, and now you can keep all your strap managed instead of going back or in and around itself. Get it hooked. We got all of the brush stuff or debris stuff cleared out. As you can see behind me, that's where the shooting house used to be, the bricks. We got all that cleared out. So now let's start thinking about the next thing that we want to do. So we've got most of the man-made stuff out. Now this is still kind of a work in progress, but it's one of those things, you know, do a little bit each time you're out there, and eventually it'll get better. So I'm going to walk you through what I look for as far as picking a spot to plant a seedling. And then around the pond, we are trying to manage for some beaver species. So while we want to manage for the beaver, I don't want it cutting down the trees that I'm planning out for the privacy. So when we discuss the beavers, and I talk about keeping them out on the property and managing for them, you know, that's one thing I want us to think about when we're thinking about land management. Beavers have been on the landscape for many, many years. So when we think about, you know, managing either for or against beaver, you know, trying to drive it off the property, I could drive it off the property, and that would be a little bit easier as far as planting trees. But there's a few things that I think about when I think about the beaver that is something to kind of keep in mind. That's kind of the fun of it to me, is going out and seeing how your management affects the species around and how we can interact with those species and manage simultaneously. As I talked about in earlier videos, the beaver has actually been cutting down some eastern red cedar, a lot of sweet gum. It's cut down quite a bit of Chinese privet. So right now it's doing more work out here than I'm able to do, and it's trying to keep the area cleared out. So for me, it's doing me more benefit to keep the beaver on the property than to get rid of it. And any negative side effects of it cutting down certain trees is fine. I'll deal with that, other than the privacy trees. And that is where we're going to go through. I'm going to show you how to build like a little beaver prevention cage that goes in, kind of like a tree tube in a sense, oversized, but it'll protect the tree, and that way I can have trees that I want on the property that I don't have to worry about the beaver getting. Funny thing is, I was looking back over the seedlings that I have, and there was no bald cypress there. So we're scratching the bald cypress for the time being. That is still the plan. We're gonna get some, put them out for privacy. We hope to do that in the near future and kind of showcase the spacing and all that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, I still want to talk about beaver structures, and I'm going to show you how to build just a very simple, basic beaver protector or tree protector for the beavers. And I'm interested to let nature kind of take its own initiative in the management process, and I'm just kind of guiding it along and observing it. I have some zip ties. These are just 8-inch zip ties. You can use some smaller than this. It really doesn't matter the size so much. We have some metal wire fencing. Again, it really doesn't matter what you get as long as it's stout enough that it's going to stand upright. Chicken wire, hog wire, any of that, just so that the beaver can't get through it. I don't anticipate it, digging around this just to get to these trees. And for this, we're going to be planting some dogwood up on there's a little corner of the pond that has some trees. We're going to be putting a pawpaw and 2 dogwood in there. So these will be used for that. So I want to build them about 1.5 feet in diameter, just so that the trees have plenty of room to grow for the dogwood, and then I'm probably going to do about 2 feet for the pawpaw just to give it a little bit of extra space. Now, when you're starting to measure this stuff out, if you want your diameter, there's 2 ways to do it. You can either use math and diameter into circumference, because we need circumference to know how long of a piece to cut. Circumference is going to be diameter times pi, or 3.14. Now, the other way to do it, which is kind of the forester's cheating method, is on our logger's tape that I carry anyways in the woods to measure tree diameter. On one side of the tape is standard inches. On the other side of the tape is your diameters. So that way I can just wrap this around a tree and it tells me the diameter without having to do any math. So what I'm going to do is roll this out, and then instead of trying to calculate math, which I've done calculated the math, and 1.5 feet would be about 6 feet, give or take, in circumference. However, I can just take this and measure out to my 18-inch mark, and I can go out to my 2-inch mark, and you can see it's going to be just over 6 feet. I'm just over 6 foot tall, and that's about my wingspan. So I guess technically I could also measure it, just stretch it out from arm to arm, and it would fit. But we'll measure it out, we'll cut it, I'll show you how then we're going to wrap it up, zip tie it, and then we can clip it under our stake. We have measured it out. Right here is going to be my 1.5 foot mark, and the trusty dusty reciprocating saw is coming back out and going to make another appearance. So now, talking about multi-purpose tools, we have a metal cutting blade on it this time instead of the wood blade that we used in the Management Monday to take down the sweet gum, and we're just going to cut down through it. Now, what else could you use? A pair of wire or tin snips, or a small pair of bolt cutters would work really well in this. So we've got it cut loose, and The reciprocating saw did really well. I was actually surprised with it. This is becoming a very useful land management tool. But we have, as you can see, it's a little bit rough on the edge that it cut. So we're gonna put that to the inside. So we're essentially gonna wrap it up like so, and just get a couple pieces of overlap down in here. And then we're gonna take 3 zip ties. And you can probably get away with 2. We'll try 2 and see. If 2 works good, we'll use it. Guys, I didn't talk about this in the tools video, but if you're looking for a pocket knife, I really like this Benchmade. I forget the model of it, but it's orange, and having an orange knife that I can't lose quite as easily, especially in the woods, is nice. All right, so we got it opened up. So again, we're just gonna put a couple layers around to show you a little bit better. Have it overlapped, 3 right here. I go down through her fur, down, skip 1, come back up through there, go through both. Then we'll tighten that down. And here you have it, our beaver protector. And just out of curiosity, how my forester's math went, I'm now going to use the plain side of my tape. As you can see here, I'm just going to try to get a rough diameter. And right here it is about 1'6", 1'7". So we're fairly close to a 1.5 feet. So if you do have a logger's tape, just measuring out on the circumference side of it, or diameter side of it, I guess you would say, does work really well. So we have 1 done. Let's make 2 more for the other dogwood and the pawpaw, and then we'll go out, we'll get them planted, show you how I installed these, how I attach the stakes, and wrap up the first part of restoring the pond ecosystem. Continuing and starting to wrap up the first video on working at the pond, restoring some of the grassland ecosystem over there, I've also talked about I'd wanted to plant the bald cypress. That's not going to work out right now, but we do have some stuff coming soon. However, I've also mentioned in the past that this is somewhere easy to access and something that we wanted to kind of make the best that we could aesthetically for people driving by, for us coming out and messing on the property. So as part of that, I'm starting to plant stuff on the back side of the pond that I've pointed to that has a little bit more aesthetic value to it. And one of those species is dogwood. So I have 2 white dogwood that we're going to be planting out here. And I picked dogwood because I know my mom really likes dogwood. So we're trying to get some more species out that everyone on the property can enjoy. Now, another thing talking about that is, you know, when you're out on your land, one of the best things you can do is do stuff with family, friends. You've seen earlier in this video, my dad was helping me tear down that shooting house building. He'll be back on next week's video where we're working in the oak savanna, removing some invasives and planting some trees that we got recently. We're going to talk a little bit about the dogwood and then figure out where to plant them and get those 2 planted. So dogwood is a fairly common tree in the understory. Looking at the Silvex manual, which if you haven't looked at the Silvex manual, I encourage you to watch our video. If you want to learn how to plant trees, watch that video and then see how you can do this. But anyways, the Silvex manual talks about dogwood being either a lowland tree or it is in most understories. So in this area, is there anywhere in particular that you would want a dogwood planted?
I was kind of looking around, maybe just kind of right in front of where you're standing.
I think right in here would be good for one.
That's where that dead pine we're going to remove.
Yeah, we can put it there.
Right over in that area.
All right. Awesome. So we got both spots picked out. I will show you the beaver cages that we've built, how we installed those, and kind of what those look like, and then we'll start wrapping up this video. It got a little bit dark filming yesterday, but we got both of the dogwoods planted. So now I want to show you how we're using our beaver structure and protection to protect these seedlings. And I want to show you how we install these in or on one of our seedlings. So you have the cage here that I showed you how to build, and then the stake. Now the stake has two ends. You have a winged end down here, and the other end is straight. So we'll put our winged end down when we get ready to stake this all in. The first thing that you want to do is just kind of get your beaver protection around your seedling. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but try to get it as close to centered up as you can. And then we're going to take our tree dibble and go around and kind of create a little hole that this cage will sit down into. Just take the dibble, and at the base of each we'll center it up, and at the base of the thing just kind of go in a little bit and see it kind of wanting to fall into place. Now we just go entirely around our beaver cage with the dibble, cutting in a groove for it to sit down in. Now, once you have your cage roughed out around, you're just going to take and you want to kind of rotate it into the ground to get a decent hold best you can. And you're going to take your stake and 2 zip ties, and I like to have something to hammer your stake down in the ground. Now, if you look, the stake, it's about 1 foot taller than the actual cage. So our stand is 4 foot tall, our cage is 3 foot tall, I think. So we're going to want to drive our stake at least down past the wings or flange, but typically I like to drive it down to it's even with the cage, and that way you don't have anything sticking up, and then we'll zip tie it onto the cage. Now, when I'm putting this in, I like to have some hammer, some way to hit it, and I will take and stick it just up against the cage as best I can, and let's get started hammering it. Okay, so it is now even with the cage, as you can see, and we're just going to zip tie everything down, and this cage will be done and ready to go. We have our zip ties. I'm just going to take 2 out. And what I typically like to do, so on these things in particular, I'll say that at least, it has some little notches that are going up and some that are going down. And for this one, I'm going to zip tie across the one going up and then across the one going down, and that way it kind of holds it together and it doesn't really want to go up or down if anything tried to move the cage. So now that we have the zip tie around and through the thing, just tighten it up. And we'll do the same down here. And the beaver protector will be ready to go for the beavers. This is what the beaver protector looks like when it's completely done. We're starting to finish up the first part of working on the pond stand and starting to get that grassland ecosystem back in. Another thing that we plan on doing here soon is we're going to start getting grasses back. Now, we have a few grasses already on the property, such as this broom sedge right here, but we want to get a few more natives back. So we're going to start showcasing us trying to, I'm interested in seeing how it is to grow our own seedlings or our own little grass plugs. So we're going to be getting some seeds and getting some plug containers and seeing just what it involves to grow our own, and that way maybe we can kind of start growing our own and getting some planted around the pond. Now with that, we plan on implementing some burns to keep it grasses, and deciding on the back side where we planted the dogwood, we're going to be trying to get a little bit more pollinator, wildflower type stuff to make it really aesthetically pleasing and to help the pollinators out, because with having fruit trees and oaks and everything else that we're trying to get for wildlife, having pollinators to be able to pollinate all of that is essential. So without them, there would be no oaks. So we want to get that done. And then we're going to start looking at getting rid of some of the mimosas, like right over my shoulder, and starting to get some native trees back around the pond and start getting rid of a lot of the invasives around here. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and got something out of it. If you did, I encourage you, please like this video, comment down below what you're starting to restore, any advice you have, species that you would recommend, or types of grass that you think would grow good out here, and just anything else that you can think of that would be beneficial for this ecosystem. And until next time, happy management and God bless.